Couple of minor items, first of all, is that we all have our own GoToWebinar controls. And on occasion, users do ask us if we can minimize or move the control bar because we're potentially blocking part of the presentation. As we all have our own controls, you can go ahead and click on that orange button with the white arrow, and that'll collapse the toolbar to the side of your panel. If you need to bring that control panel back out, for instance, to actually perhaps ask a question, you would go ahead and re-click on that orange button with the white arrow. Once again, we are going to be in listen-only mode today, so everyone's lines are muted. If you do have to ask a question, you can go ahead and use the question pane. So there's two parts. There's the chat window and there's the question pane. We'd ask you to please use the question pane to ask your questions. That'll be a lot easier for monitoring. Plus, it allows us to grab the questions afterwards. And as in past, we are recording. So we'll make the recording available, and we'll go through the questions and kind of genericize them, if that's a word basically, and then make them available along with the recording afterwards. Newforma Viewer. Well, of course, it's going to allow for the viewing and marking up of various file types. That's the most part. That's, say, PDFs, images, and then, of course, also drawing files, DWG, DGN files like that. Some of the possible uses, of course, are to be able to view them, mark them up, do some red lines. We can also create a digital light table, so we're able to kind of compare and take a look at various file structures. We'll show that. Stamping, of course, of the files, modifying PDFs, and much more. Let's go ahead and we'll go in and take a look at Newforma Viewer. First thing we have to do is, of course, is have Newforma up and running. Now, to get to the viewer, we can usually just open up a particular file. If for some reason, though, you want to see perhaps what markups you have, that is available. And if I go to my Activities drop-down to the Design flyout, you see we have all of the markup sessions that are going to be handled. So when we have created our markup, all of the previous markup sessions will be available in the markup session area. Now, as I made mention earlier, I'm going to go ahead and pick on a file, open it up, and we'll take a look at the Newforma Viewer. So I'm going to use my Quick Launch icon, and I'm going to go to the Project Files. That's going to give me the Windows Explorer type view of the various folders and files inside the system. Let's take a look at perhaps some of the CAD files, and we'll go ahead into the architectural. Now, I'm going to change my mind, actually. I'm going to go to Civil, because I'm kind of indecisive being a Monday. So what I want to point out is that we can open up a DWG file, but I know a lot of our clients, I know a lot of the Newforma users basically may not be getting DWG files. So they may be working in a PDF document. That's not a problem. We can certainly go ahead and open up and take a look at the PDF documents or the DWG files or DWF files or DGN files. So that viewer is very flexible. Let's go ahead and we'll open up this PDF. Now, if I was to double click on it, it's going to go ahead and it wants to also open up in the Newforma Viewer. So for PDFs, by default, when you're inside the application, double-clicking, same thing if I was to go ahead and select a drawing file. When I right-click, whatever is bolded as far as the option goes, that is the default option. I point that out is because with image files, it's slightly different. If you're opening an image file from Newforma and you double-click on that image file, it's actually going to open up in the Newforma Image Viewer. So let's go ahead and open up this Site Drainage Location Change PDF. It's an existing PDF document. It's existing markup, because we can actually see some of the markups that are inside of here, and we can actually go ahead and select the existing geometry, the existing markups, if we want to make some changes or modifications to it. From the viewer, you can see is that, again, if we're typically not the case in a lot of PDFs, but especially when we're talking about sheet file PDFs, that's going to be probably 1 page per sheet file. But there are some PDFs, specs, and things like that that are multiple pages. So at the bottom down here, we do have the ability to navigate to the different views. If we're dealing with a DWG file, we also may have the model or the paper space, and we'd be able to actually change and see the different views in between those files. Over on the left-hand side, bottom, we can see as we have the various drawing units. So we can set the drawing scale, or we can pick a predefined. Now for PDFs, since they're typically kind of don't have an actual drawing scale to them, it's based on the source file that was created. It kind of reads and grabs that information. On the left-hand side, we have basically the viewer task and the common questions. Again, like inside Newforma, these two areas will change and modify depending on what we have. So what tasks inside the viewer we're working on, we'll see various different viewer tasks. And again, depending on what area we're working in for, say, tasks, the common questions will update and change. At the very top, we have all of our toolbars. With the toolbars, we have some different options. Of course, starting on the kind of central or the right-hand side of the toolbar, we have our basic zooming and kind of panning across in the file. Now, I use a middle mouse button, so with that, by using the roller ball, you can see that I'm actually able to roll in or roll out, zoom in, zoom out, technically called, inside the drawing. I can also press and hold my middle mouse button down, and that's going to go ahead and allow me to grab the drawing. So if I'm kind of zooming into a different area, I may actually want to go ahead and kind of grab and pull that information in. Up top, we have the same features available, so we can use zoom extents. I can take a look at the previous zoom, so if I'm working, say, one area, I might be zoomed in on it, and then I kind of want to go back and see the overall drawing. I can kind of toggle in between those two cycles. We can also go ahead and grab the zoom tool and zoom right into a particular area. And then we have the real-time zoom. With the real-time zoom, when I select that, if I hold my left mouse button down and then basically move down the drawing or to the bottom left-hand corner, it's going to back away, negative. If I zoom up or to the upper right-hand corner, it's going to increase that zoom in. And of course, we have the hand. Once again, to use that, I just hold down the left mouse button in this case, and we're able to move around the drawing. Now we do have a couple of other features such as count and measure. We have the ability to add to source file, create action items, compare. I'm going to kind of pass over those right now. We'll talk about those in a little bit. And I'm going to come over. We have the new markup. So if I was to click on the new markup, that's going to bring up markup tools. Now I want to cover that. I'm going to give a general tool overview first. We have the ability to change the layer state. So if we want, we can go ahead and select different items and change their visibility. We can make them not displayed or dimmed and selectable. We also have the Drawing Navigator, and the Drawing Navigator works in conjunction with the searching from the system. So perhaps you've seen or even used when you search for a keyword inside Newforma. When it finds a PDF file or a drawing file that matches that text, it'll go ahead and show it up. Now sometimes you might be navigating and working, say looking for some text, and then we want to kind of come back. Well, how do we get back into that Drawing Explorer once we've closed it? And that's by using the binoculars. In addition, there are some other ones that, again, if there are multiple views, or if we have external references for a drawing file, or linked markup sessions or other markup sessions that are inside of there, and then, of course, various links inside the file. The next few icons are different ways of working with the file. So if we want to, say, create a PDF, if we want to send a PDF, if we want, we can adjust the different page sizes. We can set a few different settings, perhaps even password protect that file. We can also grab a snapshot of that current view, and that happens to be my personal favorite, and that's going to grab an image of this screen, along with any markups we have, creates an email message for us automatically, and then we can send it. We have the hard copy print, what I commonly refer to as sneakernet, when you're going to basically walk that drawing around the office or walk it out to the field, or even file a hard copy in the flat files or vertical files system. And of course, the ability to save. So that's going to do the soft copy or the electronic version. And when I started the presentation and I showed you under Design, Markup, where those markup sessions existed, that's how we go ahead and save that. Final two is that we can go ahead and show or hide that task pane. So if you want to have a little bit more room, that'll help us. And of course, bringing us back to the home task panel, the main task panels right through here. Any questions right now, Dana, in regards to the general viewer navigation or some of the basic controls?
No, we're good.
Excellent. All right. Let me go ahead and close out of that PDF. And let's take a look here at perhaps like a site future. Maybe that's a little busy. Let's take a look at this topo drawing. So once again, just gone ahead and selected my DWG file. I've right-clicked, and that's going to go ahead, and I chose the Open in Newforma Viewer. I could have double-clicked as well to bring that viewer control up. One thing also in regards to markup is that we do take view rather seriously in the fact that we do need to take a look at that DWG file. So of course we need to be able to see what the geometry is in there. We need to be able to generate the preview or the image of that. Once we have that open though, we are not going to be going ahead and making any additional changes to it or modifications to that PDF file. We're now working inside of our viewer environment. Let me go ahead. I'm going to use my zoom window and kind of come into the middle part of the drawing right here. So we can see, similar to that CCD where we were basically had changed that site drainage location. So this is the original drawing file. And again, based on the size, let me increase just a little bit right here, is that it might be a little difficult to see, maybe not from a size standpoint, but perhaps just because of the amount of visual clutter on the drawing. A lot of pertinent information, a lot of very good information on this drawing file, but perhaps for the view that you want to be sharing with your client or a different user or just for yourself, there just may be a lot of information on here. Let's go ahead and let's click on the Manage Visibility. And now we can go ahead and as we move across the drawing, you can see that different things are highlighting. So here's some contours. I can go ahead and select that, and that's gone ahead and made it so that it's not displayed. Now if I wanted to say make it so that it's dimmed, but it's still selectable, you can see is that now, let me zoom in here a little bit because it's a little easier to see that. You can just barely see the graying of that 6302 grade. But as I move over it, I'm able to basically reselect it and I could turn it back on. So that's how I could basically toggle the visibility states and go back and forth. Occasionally we're asked, well, I've turned off a layer in my view, and how can I get that back on without basically reopening the source file? So if that's the case and you've made it not displayed, you would just come right back into the visibility tool. You would click dimmed and selectable, and that's going to bring those layers back on. You would be able to select it again and bring that back on for a visibility state. Let me go ahead and say not displayed, and I'm going to go ahead and turn those off, turn a couple of these off. So it's based on, this is a DWG file, an AutoCAD file, so it's kind of based on how that drawing and the file and layers were set up. So that's why we can get some different views inside of here. So you can see right there that I can kind of in a couple of clicks, and maybe turn this last one off, in a couple of clicks basically really clean this up so it's a lot easier and visually to see and work with. Now that I've done that, let's take a look at some of our markup tools. So I'm going to come up to the markup area, the pad, with the red pen. This is going to go ahead and show me some of the various markup tools. So the very first one, of course, is the selection tool, and that's kind of the default. So whenever you want to navigate or pick or move or be choosing different tools to work with, you want to make sure that you're basically back in the selection tool. Now, I won't go through all of them because some of them are self-explanatory to a certain extent, but we do have the freestyle line, we do have the straight line tools or the leader tool. So in my example, let's say that we maybe want to have some information about this concrete walkway. Maybe I want to find out if that's going to be a stamped pattern or just basically a flat. So I may come down here and pick my leader tool, and I can kind of come in and basically make that selection. Now, when you have your leader tool selected or a tool in general selected, at the bottom we see the various pen colors. So right now I had chosen red, and that's kind of typical what you're going to do with a red line or a markup. So, but if you wanted to, you can have these different color pens come in as well. Now, the other thing is that as long as we're talking about these pens, is that you'll see here if you double click, that's going to allow you to actually edit that pen. Sometimes in the virtual machines here it takes an extra second. There you go. So first of all, for that particular pen, we can go ahead and we can identify if we want to have a different color to it. We can also choose the weight of that pen. If we want to have kind of a dashed line or something, our leader styles, transparency, and if we're doing any kind of fill, as far as well also is of course looking at the various fonts and the size of the fonts that we want to make. So we do have a few different ability to, because again we're also occasionally asked how can we change pen styles, or perhaps I don't really use green a whole lot, I want to change it to a different color. Is that possible? Yes, it is. As I kind of continue on, let me just, go ahead Dana, was there a question?
Yeah, actually, we do have one. The question was, how do I save my markup settings for text color and the text box color as default?
Well, if I remember correctly, it should be sticky in the fact that once you make these changes to it and you come back in, it should be remembering that setup, because that's going to get saved into the registry, and I know that it's each individual user. So if you're looking for a default across the entire system, right now that's not possible, so we can't say we want to set up, again, say this red pen for all users in the system. It really is based on the individual user settings.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yep. So what I was going to say is that let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of the other items. One of the tools that are probably fairly commonly used are our cloud tools. And we do have the ability to create kind of a freestyle tool, or we can do the quick and easy two-point click. So if we go ahead and I'm going to choose the freestyle, right now I can go ahead and once again pick the size of the color I want, and I'm going to go ahead and, just as it says, kind of freestyle around perhaps the building and set up a revision cloud inside of there. If I wanted to, I could also go ahead and just choose the two-point click, which is basically just doing that. You just pick 2 points, 2 locations, and it creates that revision cloud. Now, if I have created geometry or vision clouds that I no longer want to have on the screen, I go back to my selection tool. I just easily select it. I have a couple of items. First of all, I could kind of squeeze that revision cloud in and clean it up if I needed to change its size or whatever. Not probably something you would do all the time, but basically for a revision cloud and a lot of the majority of the markup tools and sessions right now, we do have the ability to rotate, much better for the stamps, or grabbing the center allows me to move that. Of course, selecting it and hitting delete on the keyboard will go ahead and actually delete that item. Finally, it doesn't make sense to have that one there, so let me go ahead and say delete, especially when I'm going to go ahead and start putting in some text right here, and we'll choose it in green. Is this walkway stamped? So I can go ahead and say OK, and once again go to my selection tool. If it's a little bit far away, if I want to move it in, I can go ahead and adjust it and bring it together just like that. So those are some of the basic tools and items inside of there. I did make mention is that we have the stamp, and by default we do have a couple of stamps that come with the system. So here's the submittal stamp right inside of here. We can do is we can go ahead and we can actually associate it with a submittal. So when I click on this, it's going to bring up my submittals listing, and I have the ability to go ahead and of course choose what's under review or all, or if it's an expected. So depending on how I want to associate this or what submittal I want to use, I can go ahead and change my view. Once I found that submittal, I can go ahead and I know it's not talking about office chairs, but I can select the office chairs for the conference room, say OK, and you'll see it's going to bring that information right back in. Now, for this particular submittal stamp, basically what we have is the actions that are available. So I'm going to go ahead and say approved as noted. Now, talking about stamps very basically is that next week, next Tuesday, there is going to be a session where we're going to go through and go into a little bit more detail about creating stamps. And some of it's basically an AutoCAD process. So we'll go through some of the connections and different ways of pulling various stamp content information in, how to have your own text inside of there, and of course we'll also take a quick look at how we can change these, say, action drop downs. Again, on occasion we're asked how can we put a different action item inside that stamp for that tool. So we'll talk about that next week, next Tuesday as well. Let's go ahead and complete this, and we'll say OK. So now I'm going to go ahead and place that stamp right inside the drawing. Now, first of all, you can see is that it was rather small, a rather tiny stamp that was created. So if I zoom in, because of course this was a site drawing, a civil drawing, and when we go ahead and kind of compare the different sizes of the two, the size of this drawing file against the other drawing objects was quite a bit different. But as you can see, we can easily go ahead and select that stamp and actually change or modify its size in the drawing to make it a little bit easier to read or a little bit larger or whatever we want. And if we want to give it a little bit more of a hand stamped process, we can go ahead and kind of give it a little skew or a little bit of a twist, and there we go. There's our approved as noted stamp inside the drawing file. If we double click on that stamp, that's going to go ahead and allow us to re-edit it. So, and let me go ahead and again, sometimes with the double clicking here is a little tough on the drawing file. Apologize for that, but if I can get it to double click, I just have a tough time in the virtual machine, we would actually be able to re-edit that stamp, and it's going to bring back up the stamp overview, so we'd be able to actually change that to a different action item to say approved or rejected or whatever else we had inside that action item inside of there. We can also go ahead, and once I have that... Oh.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but quick question.
Sure.
Can you make the background transparent?
Can the background of the stamp transparent? It's a good question. Yeah. I honestly not 100% sure about that. I would have to look into that to make that stamp transparent as far as the background, so you'd be able to see the geometry through there. Let me have that. I'll have that answer, of course, either for this session, for the question and answer period when we post that afterwards, and then I'll also have it for our session next Tuesday. Sorry that I don't know that right off the top of my head.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Any other questions right now, or?
I have a couple, but they're not quite pertinent to where we're at. When we get into the multiple pages of a markup session, I'll let this go.
Okay.
All right.
Very good. All right then. So once again, as far as the actual markup tools, I could spend a little bit more time going through here, of course, with say, perhaps the whiteout or putting an image where we can actually post a photo or an image file inside of there. But again, I don't want to spend too much time on any one individual item. I just kind of want to go ahead and show some of the core features. So talking about that, let's go ahead and actually I'm going to close out of this file, and I'm going to say no to save any of my changes. And let's take a look back inside of here perhaps at some of the photos inside the system. And I just want to show once again that if I was to double click, it would come up in the photo viewer, but I do have the ability to open with the Newforma viewer. And once I'm inside of there, I would be able to see this image file, this photo in this case, and be able to kind of start going through and say, if I wanted to go to my markup, I could do that and actually start putting some different markups inside of here or questions so I could email it off. Perhaps there is something that we have a photo here and maybe we want to start counting. So perhaps you want to start counting perhaps the trees that are in the background here. Well, I can start going, of course, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see real basically that there's a small little green checkbox that's coming in to help me with that count process. Well, probably would not be the most effective way for me to go ahead and actually try to count the trees that are on this particular site. If you remember in that last topo drawing that we had, we actually did have some trees. They had done a survey, either a flyover or a baseline survey, and we had a count. So if I go to my file drop-down and I say recent markup sessions, we can see right here is that topo drawing. So let me go ahead. I'm going to say no because I don't want to count them like that inside the photo. And I'll go ahead and bring that item, that drawing file up. Give it a second here. Once again, it's the virtual machine that I'm working in, trying to do the work of a couple of different servers, so on occasion it takes an extra second or two. So if I go ahead and let's kind of come down over to here and start taking a look, you can see all the various pine trees, P for pine, and the general size that's inside of there. So if I go ahead and click on my count tool once again, I can once again use that manual count, so I could certainly go ahead and start clicking and start picking all of the different items. Let's say that perhaps I was looking at maybe a harvest and I wanted to identify perhaps all of the trees that maybe are 16 or 17 inch type diameter or something like that. I want to keep some of the smaller ones and I want to keep some of the old growth trees inside of there as well. Well, we do have the ability to automatically count items. So this will work, of course, on many of things inside the drawing file. If I go ahead and choose the automatically count, now I can go ahead and let's see, here's a 16. Now I have two ways. I first of all could go ahead and actually pick on that tree block. Now if I do that, I saw my little pop-up that is 937, but it's not going to meet my criteria because I'm going to see the 6-inch trees, the 12-inch trees, that 32-inch right down here, that nice big old growth, or 33-inch. So I don't really want to be doing it that way. So what I do is I want to basically select the text. So now we can see I have 17. I'm choosing the 17-inch tree, the 17-inch pine, and it's going to show me that it has 22 results of that item. Now if I want to kind of continue and add on to them, also notice I got the green little checkbox right there next to them. If I wanted to include, say, the 16 in that, I can go ahead and add the 16 in, and now it was in a couple of them, bounced me up to, say, 24 as a total. Maybe we'll also go ahead and take the 15s. So now we're up to 73 inside of there. So we do have the ability to automatically go ahead and grab and count items. Now if I wanted to say just take a survey and find out perhaps how many 24-inch trees do we have, let me go ahead and say clear the results. I'm going to stay in that automatic count. I'll go ahead and click on the 24-inch, and here you can see there are 68 trees basically inside there that are, again, approximately the 24-inch. So that count will work on various objects. Again, it can be manual or it can be automated. Right now that's just a count inside the system, so there's not a way to kind of easily export this or get that value out. You would go ahead and you would basically grab this information and you would bring it over to a different document, perhaps an Excel file or something. If you do have a particular item selected, you can go ahead and either remove that from the count, or if you wanted to use the Zoom to Selected tool, it'll bring you into that particular item that you have inside the drawing right there. All right, so that's talking about that tool. Let's go ahead and clear that results, and we'll head right back out. Now inside this particular drawing right here, you can see that there's basically 2 pages. So we have the layout 1, and then we also have, of course, is that model space inside the system. So what we can do here is that I'm showing is that we can go ahead and navigate and change in between the 2 different pages. So we can see the layout view, or we can also see the model view of that particular item. Let me zoom extents. And that appears to be a blank layout for some reason. But jump back over into the model view and take a look and see right through there. Oh. And we'll just zoom in to the overall project here. What I want to show next, as far as different features, is we'll talk about the PDF and the compare, and basically reordering sheets and going that way. So a couple of things is that, of course, first of all, I need to be in a PDF document, because if we're in a drawing file, once again, that's one of the questions we'll occasionally get, is that why is the PDF editor not being shown or brought on? Well, PDF editor, of course, is only going to be able to work inside PDF documents. So what we'll do is we'll go back over, and let me just close out of this, say no for that. And let's take a look. So here's a document right here that has a PDF, and it has some of the markups inside of here. So I can go ahead and open that up inside the Newforma viewer, and we'll take a look at the 4 pages. Basically is how we can go ahead and move or start changing some of these items around. So if I navigate to the next one, you can see is that post forms, we basically have some markups inside of here. Well, let's say that even though it's kind of going to be out of order, let's say that I want to have this markup, basically show right away on the document. What I can do is I can go ahead to my tools, and I can say under PDF editor, you see as I have the basic 4 images. So if I want, I can just go ahead and grab that first one, and I can move it from, I can grab the markup that we had from its second position and place it into the first position. So I can go ahead and do that. Now if I wanted to just insert a blank page, or if I want to insert a page from another PDF, under the insert I do have that option. Let me just go ahead and put a blank page in. And I can say is that do I want to have it before the first page, after the last page, do I want to have it after a certain page? So at this point I want to kind of have it as a little break after that first one with the markups. I'll go ahead and I'll say OK and place that right inside of there. So now I've got that markup, I'll have a blank page, and then I can go ahead and have the remaining images. Now if I want to, of course, change the thumbnail view size so I can get a little better view on that particular item, we do have that scroll bar in the upper right hand corner, so we can kind of change that view a little bit. And when I'm all set, I'll just go ahead and say OK. Now I can save that particular file. And do I want to save that PDF? Yes, I do. It's going to ask me where do I want to save that PDF, where do I want to have it for information. So I can go ahead and select it. Let's put it right back into that photos directory, and of course we're going to call it the #1 version of that, and there we go. So now I'd be able to reopen that 1 version file of it, and it's going to have this new order along with having that blank page. Whoop. Go ahead and say OK here, save that markup session. And then right here is that blank page that we were looking at, and now page 2 is showing the forming stage of that particular file. basic example, easy example of the PDF editor, but that is something we can do, is that from the tools we can go ahead and actually change and modify the page position, the sort order. We can insert pages or insert other PDF items. Any questions in regards to the PDF editor or the PDF tools there?
No, not really. I think we covered it. We did have a question about how to change the order of the markup pages or delete pages or move to another markup set. But I think you're going to cover the markup set here in just a little bit.
Yep. Okay. All right.
I do have a real quick one, though. Can you rotate the photo?
The photos, we can do some rotation. I'm trying to, it depends, of course, on the photo. So here we have rotate the background pages under the view in the drop down. So we can rotate that, of course, left, and of course we can bring that back to right. So we do have that. So again, that's under the view. And then how do you want to rotate the background pages or rotate all background pages inside the system?
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure. All right then. So one thing I want to do also is I want to take a look at doing some compare. We talked earlier about the digital light table. So let me go ahead and once again close out of this particular item. And if I come over to, say, my architectural files, and I'm going to work inside of there, and if I take a look at this 0408A21, now I can right-click on that particular item, and you'll see right down here is we have a compare to. So we can compare to another file, so if we want to go out and specifically grab a file, or we can ask for basically another version of this file. So it's going to be taking a look through the system and trying to find some various matches or various connections of the information. So let me just go ahead and show up some of the different file paths, and of course I'm going to use my column filter, and I want to look for basically the A21 versions. And we can see right here is that we have the A21. So this document up top that I've selected is kind of quote-unquote the current or the construction document. So let's say that I wanted to take a look at the 50% design development. So this is in the Milestones folder at the 50%. I can go ahead and say OK. What this is doing right here, it's basically telling me is that what's my baseline document. It's, effectively the construction document, and the revised document is the 50%. So if I want to swap, and if I want to say is that I want to see the baseline and I want to see the revised, so I want to see, what my base drawing was 50%, and now I want to see the changes that are in the construction document, I can go ahead and swap the baseline and the revised selection. Now the other thing I can do is that I can set it up so when I right click on that particular file, I can say compare with the Newforma viewer. What of course this is going to do, it's going to open it up inside Newforma viewer, and it's going to bring us to the compare option. So we'll have a couple of things. First of all, we'll be able to kind of move back and forth and take a look at the two different drawing files. We'll also have the ability to use that digital light table and basically be able to kind of slide back and forth and see the before and the after of that particular file. So right now it's going through, looking at the two different drawing files and bringing up a listing of the changes. And here we are inside that particular item. So from this overall compare viewer, you can see as I do have a couple of options on my left hand side. So right now I can see everything that's basically not changed, that's been removed or been added. So if for some reason, if I don't want to see anything that's not changed, I could actually turn off that not changed items. Now, as I slide back over to my baseline or my 50% drawing, and then I can come back over to the revised drawing and see the information in that new construction document. So you can see right here, I can kind of go back and forth. Down at the bottom, we can see the original location and we can see the revised location is showing up in green inside of there. So there was the original location in that magenta, and now in that kind of lime green we're seeing that revised location. Once again, if I want to bring back into the whatever's not changed inside of there, I can have that information as well. Up in the compare tasks, we have the digital light table, so I can go ahead and select that item. That's going to open up a different viewer, and it's going to show me basically the before and the after. So it's a little bit simplified, again if that's a word, view of the particular items. So we can see right here the before and the after. So it kind of stays just in that simple blue and red type color, gray in the background, showing the different items. Now, if we have this after, and if we want to do some markups, you can see is that I don't have any markup tools that are available. This is actually a different window right here. So what we can do is that you would want to use the markup or print image. Once you kind of have it to the view you want, then you can go ahead and use the markup tool to again apply notes or leader tools or highlights or different information, or of course print it and make it available. So I can go ahead and close out of this one. And then there's also a modify comparison. So we can see right here is that what's the baseline, what's the revised, and then we can kind of also make some changes if they were slightly skewed. On occasion, sometimes drawings are just off, so we can help to align the drawings. We can fit the revised to baseline, so we can go ahead and make some adjustments if for some reason the two drawing files are slightly skewed, or if they're, say, 0 point. The XYZ point is slightly off inside the system. We can help align and bring those back. Any questions in regards to compare to the digital light table? Or
Actually, I do. I have a really good one that just came in.
Okay.
If you were to move the entire drawing in model space and compare it to the original, would the entire drawing show as moved or revised? In essence, does it read changes relative to 00?
I believe that's where we're talking about is the alignment point, is that I have seen drawings where it says everything is basically changed, and it's because of course it is moved off that 00. So I think we would have to go ahead and you would use that align, and that's going to move it back to align the drawings to 00. And again, it's possible is that if you were using, say, a building cornerstone, is that may have been moved from 00, or for some reason the next drawing file was kind of completely copied in, and maybe it was copied in at 1.1 for some reason. So you need to move that back to 00. If you're going from, say, a 00 to a 1.1, and then you compare, it would basically see the entire drawing as moved or modified.
Understood. Great answer. Thanks, Stephen.
Okay.
And I have another one. Can you use the light table with PDFs?
Yes, you can use the light table for PDFs, and again, it depends on the PDF though. It's because, of course, with PDFs, some of the PDFs do have the layers enabled, and some of them don't, as far as think kind of a text document. I've honestly not tested it with a text document to see if there's text changes. That's kind of an interesting thought now that I'm talking about it, so maybe I can see if I can create two different documents and see if I get anything. So I'll post that as a Q&A follow-up with the recording, but again, it really has to be in a PDF. It has to be the geometry that it can recognize some changes have happened.
Excellent.
All right. And I think there was one other area. Was it markups? Because we covered markups. What was the question, Dana?
The markup sessions. So can we change the order of the sheets in a markup session?
Can we change the order of sheets in a markup? Are we talking like PDF tools, or are we talking that like down through here where I have different sheets from this drop-down set, changing that?
I believe what we're talking, and I'm interpreting the question, and please, if I don't have it right, let me know. I believe when you save a markup session, the windows that are listed on the right-hand side?
Yep.
Can you adjust those where you make those notes and you add on that pane? Do you know what I'm talking about, Stephen?
I do.
Okay.
That's another thing is I've never really gone to go ahead and kind of just change the order of those of those views around. I kind of just use them as a quick link to basically reopen and bring a file back in. So I've
Right.
not tested that. It's something else I can take a look at with the Q&A log and post my answer after the session.
Sounds great. I do know that you can delete those, but I don't know if you can rearrange them.
Right.
So,
I think that's
okay.
also how you can basically go ahead and close and get out. Yep, go ahead.
Yep, we will follow up on that.
Okay. All right then. So at this point, that's kind of going through the major items inside the viewer that I wanted to kind of talk about and get through. So if there are some additional questions, we'll certainly stay online and cover those. I also wanted to, again, remind you that next week, next Tuesday, we're going to be talking about stamps in a little bit more detail. That should be, I'm thinking, right about probably a half an hour or 40-minute session. We'll go through the process of creating a stamp. I'll also show you some of the documentation we have with the various fields to make the connection. One of the things that we have as a pretty nice improvement is we have the ability to wrap long text in a stamp now. So I'll show you how to set that process up. In addition, I'd also like to go ahead and ask everyone, if you've not signed up yet, to attend our Nugget, which is Nugget 2012, coming up in Fort Worth, Texas. And that is going to be in September, between the 17th and the 19th. So it's extended out. It's basically 3 days now, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. During that Nugget session, we are going to be having 5 tracks. So you probably want to think about bringing a couple of people, because it's going to be difficult to attend 5 sessions at once. So over the 2 days, Tuesday and Wednesday, we're going to have numerous 1-hour sessions. There's going to be a design track, which there'll be one area focusing on Newforma Project Center and also contract management. Then we'll also have the Project Analyzer, our financial viewer tool. That's going to be part of the design track. In the construction track, we'll be looking at the construction suite of software and really focusing specifically on construction information. We have a technical track, which will talk about implementations and configurations, items like that. So we'll be looking at the back end, the administrative side. And something that we're really excited about this year is we're going to have a computer lab. So we're going to be able to give you hands-on time. So in some of the sessions, you may be able to attend one. For example, I'll be talking about Revit in the upcoming Nugget. And we're going to have a follow-up session with the hands-on afterwards, where you'll be able to try out some of those new features right there. So you want to make sure you kind of sign up for these and or sign up for attending the Nugget. So I want to encourage everyone. I want to ask everyone to take a look at it. You certainly get a lot of value out of side of there. You're going to have quite a bit of training. I believe they're saying it's a little bit over $2,500, $2,700, I think was the estimate, when they're talking about 9 different training sessions at $300 a piece. There should be, multiple tracks, so you should be easy to find some information you're looking for. You'll, of course, a lot of the Newforma designers, planners, services, support will be at the system. And more importantly, you'll be able to network with coworkers. Now we're reaching out to, of course, architects, engineers, construction, and owners. So we're going to have a large audience. You'll be able to communicate and see a lot of potentially coworkers or people that you want to start working with. Dana, are there any other questions right now?
The only other thing that really popped up while you were talking about the Nugget was, how do we handle Word and Excel files?
Okay. Word and Excel files are not objects that are coming up in the viewer. It's because Word and Excel are basically viewed inside their either one authoring software, or they can also be opened up through the Internet Explorer. And I know that inside of Word, there are a couple of track changes options. Now, of course, that works better if you're tracking them as you're doing the changes. And the Word also has a compare option inside of there. So for Word, for Excel, we basically let the authoring software or the Internet browser tool take over for those particular items. Again, with the viewer, we normally stay right inside your CAD files, your image files, and some of the PDF files.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you, everyone. And on the East Coast, thank you for spending your lunch hour with us. In Central, have a good lunch. And for Mountain and Pacific, enjoy the rest of the morning. We'll stay online for a couple of minutes to see if there are any more questions. Otherwise, we will be addressing and answering the questions and putting out the recording of this video along with the question log. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks, Stephen.